So, we got some pretty big news for Diablo 4. And it does not have anything to do with any kind of characters or, new game modes or revamps or changes to the game itself. But it is going to heavily impact, well, I should say it's going to potentially heavily impact Diablo 4 as a whole. And that is the Activision Blizzard deal with Microsoft, and Microsoft acquiring them for nearly $70 billion. Now, a while back, like if you go back like a month or so ago, you'll have had a lot of bad news supposedly for the deal. It looked like it wasn't going to go through, which means you weren't going to see a lot of Blizzard's and Activision's games going to Game Pass, which is the big reason why Diablo 4 might have an insane player number for the first year. Now, what happened recently, the biggest hurdle that was overcome was the CMA from the UK initially came out and said they were going to block the deal, or they were leaning towards blocking the deal because Sony was worried that they were going to be foreclosed, like they were going to be driven out of the console business. Call of Duty was just too big. So Microsoft got ahead of that, basically said, hey, we're going to bring Call of Duty to as many platforms as possible. And then a lot of people said, oh, we don't believe you. Well, then they started signing 10-year deals with the likes of Nintendo. They even went to sign one with the cloud gaming NVIDIA and their cloud game streaming service, which I have no idea what it's called, for 10 years. And a lot of other, they even offered it to Steam, Valve from Steam. He said, yeah, I don't need a document from them. I trust them. Anytime they promise something, they've followed through with it, so I don't need anything from them. Pretty strong words from a corporation, from Gabe himself, who basically said that. So overall, all these deals that they've been signing with people has kind of changed, at least helped change a lot of perspective. Microsoft also talked to the CMA and said, hey, how did you come to this conclusion here? And there's, oh, you didn't take into account this, and this, and this. I don't remember the exact details of what specifically it was, but there was a few changes that they needed to tweak to their formula to get a model to see how it would impact it. And then once they got their information corrected, they realized, oh, yeah, they would lose billions of dollars over the course of 5 years on top of the amount that they're spending, $70 billion on this deal. Yeah, it just doesn't quite make sense in any of the circumstances that why the heck would they pull it from Sony if they're going to lose that amount of money. And even if they did, someone else could come along and be a replacement for them, like, EA. They have a couple games that could potentially replace Call of Duty on PlayStation. And they would also be hurting themselves, so it's not like they would be getting an insane amount of profit for doing so. It'd literally be kicking themselves in the nuts. Just doesn't make sense. Unless you're into that kind of thing, in which case, then it makes sense. But I don't think a corporation for profit is going to want to do that, though. Now, with that hurdle overcome, we already heard prior to that the European Union was planning on likely passing it, according to Reuters. They came out and said, which they've been on top of the ball lately, talking about a lot of the Activision Blizzard stuff, and they've gotten some things pretty early. So that means if the European Union passes it and the CMA passes it or allows it to go through, you only have the FTC, which has been on a blocking spree. They've been, it's like, you know what, we're going to block it, we're going to block this, we're going to block that, we're going to block everything. We're going to go after everything and wasting taxpayers' dollars on frivolous lawsuits, in my opinion. And they have been losing a lot of these cases in court. In fact, you had a PlayStation gamer launch a lawsuit to try and stop this, arguing a lot of the same stuff that the FTC themselves have argued. And that case was thrown out. They said you can refile it, but you're going to have to bring evidence. You're going to have to show us how you came to this conclusion. You're going to have to bring more than just allegations, basically. Now, the FTC might have that data, but I don't think they probably have a leg to stand on either. And in fact, one of the lawyers in a meeting, I believe with the FTC, I think, and basically came out and said this: if this passes in the UK and if this passes in the European Union, we're going forward with the deal. We're going to close. Basically letting the FTC know, yeah, if you want to stop us, take us to court. Like the actual court, not the FTC crap, which is a whole mess in of itself. Now that they've been, in my opinion, radicalized into just trying to block everything, even if it makes sense, or even if it doesn't make sense. So now, if they do take it to court, they're probably going to lose. A lot of, like, Hogue Law, who's a U.S. mergers and acquisitions lawyer, says, yeah, they don't have a very strong case in the United States. If it goes to the court, they're probably going to lose. So, if they close it, and the FTC does take them to court, and they end up losing, well, guess what? They're just going to look bad. It's going to be like, yet again, you try to sue someone for something that they didn't actually do. It's just not going to look good for the FTC. I wouldn't be surprised if they remove some of the members from the FTC and put someone else there who's not crazy. And what that means is potentially, sometime this year, Diablo 4 will end up in Game Pass. Yeah, I know it took like 7 minutes to get to this point, but this is a pretty big deal. Because you had some other games, like, for example, Forza Horizon 5 that came out, what was it, a few years ago at this point, that had some pretty big, like, player numbers because of the fact that it was on Game Pass. And I don't think it would have gotten that player base. Like, maybe a few million, like, maybe like, I don't know, like 3 to 5 million in the same amount of period it took them to get, what was it, like 17, 18 million players. So, and which probably led to more sales for the people who did like it, or at the very least them maybe potentially buying DLCs from the Forza Horizon series in order to play those DLC. Because even though you have Game Pass, you still got to buy the DLC in a lot of the first party games. But it does, help out. And the last time, for example, like certain products, like for example the Forza Horizon series, they have it where they sometimes delist some of their games because, music license agreements or other types of agreements run out. But if they had it where you purchased the DLC and they did delist it, you would still be able to play the game because, they would just give you the base version of the game saying, hey, you had it on Game Pass. You played it for this amount of time. Give them base game. Here, you bought the DLC. You can play it. And that's actually nice. If they keep that up, I would, like, Game Pass is going to be even more insane than it is right now. And Diablo 4 is going to be a live service game, from what it seems like. I've been paying attention to somewhat to it, but I don't like to go too crazy in it. Like, getting all the nitty-gritty details of, what's going to be in it, what classes are going to be in it. Well, classes, I don't mind. But, like, what type of models is it going to have for the live service? What makes sense is probably copying what Path of Exile did, though. Now, how much did they copy? Did they just say, okay, we're only doing the cosmetics, and that's it? Battle Pass? I think they're going to do Battle Pass almost certainly. They're going to do the cosmetics, guaranteed. Now, the question is, do they make it so the amount of storage you have for items, is that going to be tied to the, what do they call it? What do they call it? Like, monetary. Like, are you going to have to pay? And if so, maybe that can be an incentive. Because, like, hey, if you purchase this, if you get Game Pass, you get, unlimited storage. Throw in like little incentives like that. If you're playing on Game Pass, that could be a way to, alleviate some of that and get more people to play Game Pass. Because I don't think the storage is going to be that big of a concern. And if you get them to subscribe to Game Pass, because you got to remember, they want people to play Game Pass. They want people to have a subscription to Game Pass, because the higher that number goes, the more money they make per month, which is pretty big. Think about it. If the price is like right now, it's like $10 for either the console or the PC version, $15 for Ultimate, which is basically all versions. Which I don't know when the prices of that are going to go up. They also have a planned, from what it seems like they're testing it out in other countries, a family and friends Game Pass, which last I checked was estimated to be around $25. So you would be able to have up to 5 friends accounts, like, or up to 5 people's total on that. That's like you and 4 other people under this Game Pass family and friends service, which comes out to about $5 a month per person if you get all 5 people on board, and they each pay $5. So you do have that as a possibility, to pay that way instead, assuming they don't raise that version of the Game Pass. Maybe they bring it to $30 or $35. I don't know. But what I do know is if this deal does pass, Game Pass is going to see a huge surge of people playing the game, because, quite honestly, Game Pass is going to make the barrier to entry very easy. It might not be as good as a free-to-play model, but Game Pass is still a pretty nice incentive, or a pretty easy way to get into it. Pretty cheap alternative, because you can not only get Diablo 4, you're going to get Diablo 3, Diablo 2 in Game Pass. I wouldn't be surprised if they go and make a Diablo 1 Definitive Edition, Diablo 2 Definitive Edition, Diablo 3 Definitive Edition, and maybe make some of these that require an online version for the single player, Diablo 3 on the PC side of things. Maybe make offline versions, maybe throw in some mod support, maybe fix some of the things like in other aspects, aka the Warcraft RTS series. Warcraft 1 Definitive Edition, Warcraft 2 Definitive Edition, Warcraft 3, well, I'm just going to go Definitive Edition because the Reforged sucked. Maybe even make a Warcraft 4, StarCraft 1 Definitive Edition, StarCraft 2 Definitive Edition, make so you can play StarCraft 2 and make it easier for the offline version of that game, because quite honestly, it's a little bit convoluted. I really do not like the offline aspects to StarCraft 2. I would like to be able to download all these skirmishes or all these mods that are on there to play on an offline version, instead of having to do, constantly be connected to there if I just don't want to be connected. So there's that aspect to it that could be changed if this goes through. And a StarCraft 3 is almost certain. Now, the reason why I say that is almost certain, Age of Empires, they did 1, 2, 3 Definitive Edition. They released 4, and then they are now announced, or last year they announced a Age of Mythology remake or remaster, which is basically Age of Mythology Definitive Edition. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to work on an Age of Mythology 2 afterwards, unless this deal goes through, in which case they might go and apply that, start remaking some of the RTS games in Blizzard. So you're going to have a lot of Blizzard games probably getting remade, brought back, and having a more up-to-date version of the game to play. That's not including Activision, which you would probably get Spyro Trilogy on Game Pass, the Crash Trilogy Game Pass, Crash 4 on Game Pass, and all the other spin-offs games on Game Pass at some point. So overall, it's really looking good for Game Pass, and all those different people subscribing to Game Pass over the course of however many years, because you got to think about it. Let's just look 5 years into the future. All these different games that is going to be put on Game Pass are eventually, I think, going to drive players to actually try Diablo 4 in the long run. Because you don't have to pay the $70. Let's just say if 3 years from now, let's just say I get my cousin and his wife and say, hey, you know what? Diablo 4 is in a really good spot right now. Why don't you hop on over for this season, this league? I'm excited for Diablo 4. Because all the different types of stuff, and there's better aspects to it. Let's just throw the what do they call it? The Game Pass aspect out of it, apparently, from what I've heard, you're getting respecs that are going to cost gold. And the more times you respec, the cost goes up. You're probably going to get at least a couple respecs out of this for relatively cheap gold-wise, which is already better than its competitor, Path of Exile. Path of Exile, in my opinion, is the dumbest freaking system for leveling and progressing in any ARPG game I've ever played. Hey, here's 20 points worth of respecs. Oh, what level are you going to be by the time you reach the Act 10? Probably around 60 or 70. So I only get like a third of a respec for beating the game or the campaign. It's so freaking stupid. It is dumb. Honestly, Path of Exile should have at least 3 respecs, free respecs, for beating certain portions of the game. Act 5, if you beat it. Because, that's the big milestone where your resistances get debuffed. Put a respec there. Act 10, put 2 respecs there. Because that's the last milestone. And have it where you can bank 3 free respecs. That means new players can get 4 chances to find a build on the same character that they're playing to, basically find a character, or I should say a build that they like and want to play. Currently, you don't have that. I don't know how many times I've started playing the game, like Act 7 or Act 5 or somewhere around there, and realize, this build doesn't seem that fun. I'm done. Because I don't want to restart a character build. Simple as that. So, Diablo 4 looks like you're going to not have that problem. You're going to at least be able to respec as long as you have the gold. And you're still going to have to change character if you want to play a different character, So, there's still incentives to play another character if that's what your concern is. So, overall, Diablo 4 looks like they're going in the right direction. There is some complexity to it, not as much as the complexity of PoE, but sometimes you just gotta keep it simple, stupid, KISS. There's a certain aspect to that makes sense. Sometimes if you overcomplicate things, it's not as fun. And PoE, I think, is getting to that point where they're overcomplicated it, where the complexity used to be fun and interesting has now just become tedious and unfun for the vast majority of players. And I think hopefully PoE 2 fixes that, because I'm sick of shitting on PoE. Honestly, I really want them to get the game in order. I don't mind them keeping a lot of the complexity, but there's got to be some non-tedious ways to incentivize people to stick to the game and give it a shot. Because any person I've ever tried to get them to play PoE hasn't made it past Act 3. Because I'm not going to bullshit them. I'm not going to say, hey, if you're not having fun with this character, you might want to start a new character, because there's no free respecs at the, if you make it to Act 10. And if they're not having as much fun anymore with the character they have or the skills they have, or they screwed up their build too much, they're going to feel demotivated to actually continue on. But if I were to say, hey, yeah, don't worry, after Act 5, you beat it, you get a free respec. At Act 10, you get 2 free respecs. So just, if you're not enjoying this character or whatnot, if you're able to make it through the game, Acts 1 through 10, to make it to end game, you're going to have 3 free respecs to try out different character builds. They might feel the necessary motivation to push through it more, knowing that they don't have to start a new character if they get to, let's just say, Act 10, beat it, and they don't like their build. So, that's my personal opinion or take on this. And I think overall, the long term, I think Diablo 4 is going to be in a really good state. I can see myself playing this game based on everything I've seen, based on the direction that I think they're going. Now, obviously, before I get this out there, this is based on my impressions right now. If they do something stupid 2 or 3 months in that basically changes that, that's a possibility. I'm not going to say it's definitively going to. They're not going to make dumb choices or dumb decisions, but based on everything I've seen, I'm liking the direction that they're going, and I can see myself getting invested in this universe. You know, I like, you know, invested in the game. And it's pretty hard nowadays to get me invested in a live service game. Warframe tried that. I tried Warframe, and it says, oh, it's 100 hours before it gets good. And then you also had the stupid mechanics of, imagine this. Imagine you're farming for gear, or pieces of gear to make your gear in Diablo 4. And then he's like, okay, you got this piece, this piece, this piece. Now I'm going to make this legendary weapon, this legendary hammer that's going to go with my barbarian or something like that. And you start to, you know, to build or to craft it. And it says, okay, you got to wait 72 hours in real time, not in game time, real time before this is completed. Yeah, no, thank you, Warframe. Your system is shit. It's garbage. It's unfun. It's tedious. I'm not playing it. Bye. And I left. Never going back to that game. Unless they fix that stuff. Diablo 4, they don't have any of the annoying things that I've seen so far that would deter me from this. On top of this, Diablo is a successful franchise, so unless they do something really stupid, I can see this game lasting a while, which is one of my main concerns when I talk about investing myself, or my time, I should say, into a live service game. I honestly think this is one of the more interesting live service games that may actually stand the test of time. So, that's it. That's pretty much my take on Diablo 4 and why I think it's honestly going to be very successful. And there's the news around the whole acquisition is pretty huge for Diablo as a whole, with people being able to potentially play this with a subscription to Game Pass, unless you're Sony. In which case, if you're a Sony gamer, you should probably start pressuring your Jim Ryan and the higher-ups in Sony if you want this. You want Game Pass on your platform, because I can guarantee you Xbox and Microsoft will want to bring your Game Pass to your platform, but it's your higher-ups on your favorite console that is stopping it. If you were to pressure them to basically force them to allow it, I guarantee you Microsoft will be willing to bring Game Pass to Sony, in which case you will be able to play all your PlayStation games and Xbox games on Sony. Because I believe it was something along the lines of this with Phil Spencer. He said, we're bringing our games, which is the Bethesda games at the time, but it pretty much applies to their exclusives, to Xbox and any platforms that support Game Pass. That was what they said. And that still holds true to this day from what I've heard and seen. Meaning, if you convince and force Sony, the higher-ups at Sony, to bring Game Pass to PlayStation, then that means, or to allow it to be on the platform, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft starts bringing Game Pass to their platform. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. But maybe someday in the future. That's it. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.